Personal branding's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I always say in my previous life, I started my career in branding and advertising. And through the years, I decided that actually it's not really my path. And I stepped into a completely new career in 2011, which was about coaching and training and speaking. And so I constantly had to keep reinventing my brand. How do I portray this new brand? And so it's something that we don't get to a point and it's done. It's something we have to keep doing. So we will stop at about 20 past for questions. So maybe if you've got questions, we can share them in the chat, but then there will be space at the end. So to kick off, I just want you to think about what are some of the brands or the branded products you've used since this morning. So just think about it. Was it a toothpaste? The ones that always come up, Colgate, Apple, whether it's a body lotion, whether it's something you had for breakfast. If you just think about what are the daily brands that I engage with, right? And now if I said to you, okay, so I don't know if you can see it in the screen. Let's take an Apple iPhone. And I said to you, what words, what images start to come into your mind when you think about the brand Apple? And again, because we're not face to face, I'm going to fill in the gaps here because of time. But typically the ones that come up is we think expensive, we think sleek, we think design, we think Steve Jobs, we think innovation. So if we said, okay, well, what is a brand? And really what a brand is, it's a promise. Because it's a promise of the value you know you're going to receive from that. It creates emotional bonds. Think about how everybody is with their sports team, whether it's Man U, Liverpool, Chelsea, Bulls, Sharks, Chiefs, Pirates, whatever. When they win, you are with them. And when they lose, no one must come and speak to you. That's an emotional bond. But really what a brand is, it's a sorting device. Because if I said to you, right, I'm going to give you two options. Here is Coca-Cola. Here is kind of a no-name brand, red ribbon around it. Which one are we going to go for? Naturally, Coca-Cola. Why? Because it's that promise. It's that promise of the joy, the thirst quenching, everything else the marketing tells us. So if I said to you, okay, let's now consider people who have become brands. And again, I'm going to fill in the gaps, and I think you'd agree these are some really powerful brands. But if I said, right, let's take Oprah Winfrey. Again, what words, what images, what experiences come into your mind when you think about Oprah? And I'm sure you'll agree, humanitarian, she's a great listener. You know, everybody look under your chair. You get one and you get one. And these are the common things we all think about it. So Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said it best. And he said, a brand for a product is like a reputation for a person. So think about that. Because in the same way, these brands create these words, these images in your mind, so do you. And what I want to explore with you today is how do you create the desired words that come into people's minds? So in other words, what do you have to do to become a brand? And why does this matter? Because in the world of being an entrepreneur, the world of having your own business, even if you are not in your own business and you are working for a company, this is your sorting device. Because your brand is the promise you make, implicitly or explicitly. Another way to think about it is, what do people expect of you when they engage with you? Because brands that keep their promises are consistent and trustworthy. And from the minute you engage with your stakeholders, your clients, your suppliers, even the ladies in Woolies or Pick and Pay, you have a brand. Because you're either going to be branded as that impatient customer who's not listening, or the smooth professional who gets the job done. And your brand is a story, and it's a story that helps other people tell themselves a story about you. And most of the time, their stories aren't true because no one knows you as well as you do. So that's why it's up to us to consistently and persistently show up in a way that amplifies your brand. Because your brand's not what you say about yourself, it's what others are saying about you. And you've got to position it. So if I said to you, think about someone you work with, think about a client, can you start describing them? And a vocab starts popping into your head. But the same is true of you, is that people are ascribing a vocabulary about you, whether you're consciously involved in the process or not. So where do we begin? How does this branding journey look? So the starting point is to think to yourself, okay, if I had to pick 4 words, and I really want you to do this, whether you're doing it now with me or whether after we have this webinar, but to really sit and think about it. What are 4 words that you want to be known for? So guys, I will share the slide deck with you, so don't worry to copy everything down. What are 4 words? So when someone thinks about you, what are those words you want to come into their mind? Is it trustworthy? Is it ambitious? Is it creative? Is it dependable? Right? So now that you know those words, the question becomes, what am I doing every day to demonstrate it? Because we can't walk around with the t-shirt that goes ambitious, loyal, trusted partner. It's our behaviors, because it's everything we do and say that is communicating that brand. And so that's why we can't leave it up to others to decide how we show up. So if you think to yourself, okay, what is the first impression I make when I walk into a room? And at least we can walk into rooms now. But whether you're online, whether you're in person, it's thinking, okay, how am I showing up? Is there a gap? Am I intending to show up a certain way, but in fact, I'm coming across a different way? Is there a disconnect? And that's what we're going to look at today. So this is the roadmap that we're going to go through, right? Because your brand is made up of your honor, integrity, the skills and the knowledge you bring, and consistency we're going to talk about throughout this session. Consistency is really important. But central to your brand, number one is accountability. So we have to take ownership for our decisions, our actions. We can't go, well, that client made me angry, that's why I did this. There's a consequence. And it's really, self-awareness is key, because the more you know yourself, the more you're aware of your strengths, your blind spots, what do I still need to work on? But the most important thing is your attitude, because attitude is a choice, and it is that lens through which we view the world. And we can choose to have an attitude of self-motivation or self-defeat. And if you think about people that you love to work with, those go-getters, they just have got that attitude that they will go above and beyond. Those are who we want to rally around. But now if you think about, I don't know if anybody saw the movie Harry Potter, right? And if you have or if you haven't, there are these creatures called Dementors. And in the movie, when these Dementors come up to you, as they walk away, the happiness, the joy, your soul gets sucked out of you. And I always ask, do we know someone like that? You know, you have a conversation and you feel, wow, they were negative, or I feel drained. And that becomes part of their brand. That's how you associate them. And attitude is a really key ingredient. And the rest of the roadmap, we're going to look at physical presence, your virtual, your interpersonal. So how am I dealing with stress and conflict? Your social presence. How am I dealing with relationships? How am I building them? And then the hidden one is your intrapersonal. How do I show up to myself? And this slide is just reminding us that we never get to a point where we go, I'm done, my brand is brilliant, because we've all know that one small action, one wrong move, and you can completely take away what you've built. It'll come to me now, the billionaire, he said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 2 minutes to destroy it, which we saw. But don't worry, you're allowed to make mistakes, because we're human and we're fallible, right? And the point is, it's not that you have to be perfect. The point is, how do you own those mistakes? And sometimes, and we've all seen it in our businesses, that a crisis can actually become a point where you prove how great a brand you are, because it's what we do with those things. And this ad came out of the KFC. It was about 3 years ago, or anything that's pre-COVID or post-COVID, it's pre-COVID. And what happened is they changed suppliers and they ran out of chicken, literally, across 700 stores. And they didn't blame and they didn't shame. They said, you know what, we're owning this. This is what we're doing to fix it. And I think it's the same with us. Mistakes can happen. Something gets delayed. We have to let a client down, but it's the way we manage it, the way we approach it, which can actually even make us more powerful brands. So if we think about physical presence, right, the message that we send out every day is based on the way we choose to dress, the way we hold ourselves, and the way that we connect with others. So we may as well send out a message that projects the best version of ourselves. So I'm going to touch on this really briefly, because often we think, you know, when you say personal brand, we often think, oh, is it what I'm wearing? What do with brands or labels? It's about inspiring trust. As the way that I'm showing up, inspiring trust in my clients, in the people that I want to buy into me. And if you think about when you get on an airplane, right, how do those pilots arrive? They groomed and they've got the uniform and there's that aura of trust. You know, you're putting your life in their hand. But if the guy on the left here said, ladies and gents, ready for our trip to Cape Town, we're finding another airline. And I think that's the thing to think about. And it's also not only, it's about be appropriate to the environment, but authentic to you. Who are your clients? If you are working in a law firm, there's a certain expectation. If people are in an ad agency, there's going to be something more casual. So it's also not only about what's my style, but what does my client need to believe in me, to feel trust in me? And it's also about verbal and nonverbal, right? It's what we say, but the nonverbal, what we don't say. And research that came out of UCLA showed that when it comes to communicating a message, only 7% accounts for the actual words that come out of your mouth. The bulk, the most important things was about tone of voice, about body language, and it's that nonverbal communication. But I want to talk about the verbal for a second. And guys, what I'm telling you now is what I call a series of BLOs. Of the obvious. I'm not sharing revelations. All I'm doing is reminding you of the stuff you know, but sometimes we forget to do, especially when we're stressed. And just some things to think about when it comes to the verbal. Manners matter. You know, just please, thank you, I appreciate that. Even if someone's doing what they're meant to. Think about when you drive in traffic, right? And in the morning you can see someone's indicating and you think, I'm going to be a nice person, and you let them in. And all you want to see are those hazard lights going off, acknowledging that you were a nice person. And if they say thank you, you are happy. And if they don't, you're cursing that you did it. But it's the same with us. Are we even just, wow, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Also, mind what you're shutting down. So if you're sitting in a work situation, a meeting, a brainstorm, don't be the person that's going, can't be done, this is impossible, it's never going to work. But be solution driven, because again, that's how you're going to show up more powerfully. But what's more interesting is the other 55%, because the second you walk into a room, whether it's online or in person, people are sizing up your physical presence. So you got to think, what am I telling them? So basics, eye contact, right? The sooner we make eye contact, I'm with you, I'm present. Who's ever had an experience where you're trying to talk to someone between checking messages and mails? So it just shows I'm present and I'm with you. And what's really powerful is your body language, right? Because this is not only what I'm projecting to other people, but it's what am I projecting to myself? Because if you think about, if I was standing in front of you in person and I would walk out and I would make sure that my shoulders are back and I've got a smile on my face and I'm taking up space, and you would feel, wow, this person's confident. But if I came in and I said, hi, I'm Laurie, so nice to be here, you're kind of cringing in your seat going, I'm not giving an hour and a half of my time to this person. So guys, think about the way you show up to meetings, the way you walk into a room. Doesn't matter what's going on inside, if you're nervous, if it's a big pitch, but that way that you present yourself, it's that energy that you're bringing to the room. So be aware of it. Even like sitting in a meeting, you know, are you taking notes? Are you sitting slumped? And what's really interesting is they did research. There's a great TED talk by Amy Cuddy called, so just Google TED talk Amy Cuddy, watch the talk. And what they found is they said, we know mind influences body. Can body influence mind? And what they found is that if you stand in a power pose, so you can see the poses above, like the victory pose or the warrior pose, it actually boosts your testosterone and it drops your cortisol, the stress hormone. And so what she says is that before a courageous conversation, a meeting, boost your physiology. You know, don't go walking around that in front of the office. People will think you're weird. But it's not so much that we need to stand powerfully. It's that we tend to stand in a low body pose more often than we think. And it's again, what are we projecting? And I always have the 3 Ps of the nonverbal, which are really things to think about. So the first one is preparation, right? So if you're meeting a new client, go on to LinkedIn, have a look at them. What do they look like? Are they male? Are they female? Where do they previously work? Prepare. Is it an industry thing? What do you need to know? What are the questions you need to ask? Because if you sit down with a client and you go, or a new supplier or whatever in your business, and you say, wow, I saw that you previously worked at SAB, and I saw that actually you were in marketing. Wow, tell me about that. I see that you enjoy global warming. And so straight away, this person thinks, wow, they've done their homework. The next P is about participation. So it's all well to have that meeting, but it's about being in, if you're in a situation where you need to share your views, because often what we go is, oh, well, I don't want to say anything. What if I sound silly? So we don't say something. But if you lose that opportunity, you become a no-name brand, which no-name brands are fabulous for washing powder, but not in your business. So this is what I think. This is why. Share your value. That's how people know. And the last P is about being punctual. So we all know that person who's always 20 minutes late, right? And what do you think about that person who's always 20 minutes late? How do we associate them? They're not reliable, they don't plan. How can I trust them with something bigger if they can't even arrive for a team meeting and they're always 10 minutes late? So I think it's sometimes, and if you're that person who is late, it's okay. You can behave your way back into trust, but it's about understanding what is that person, what is the image I'm creating if I make somebody wait. For me, if someone's late, I think clearly they don't respect my time. Clearly they're not planning ahead. So do everything you can to make sure that you're early so that you can walk in calm and confident. Because remember, your clients will buy into you. It doesn't matter what you're selling. They have to have trust in you before they will even look at your product or service. So just some things to think about. It's that consistency, because if you think about your favorite coffee shop. If you love Seattle and you go to Seattle and one day they get it perfect, then the next day it tastes like they've burnt it. Then the next day it's kind of okay, and you get where I'm saying. We're going to go, I need a different brand. So it's about consistency. Are we showing up all the time? Are we managing? Are we letting people know if things don't happen? Are we delivering 10 out of 10 all the time? Transparency. And also, guys, bringing back the human touch, that it's so easy to send an email, send a WhatsApp, but what can be solved in a 5-minute conversation? And especially when you've got to deliver bad news, don't do it in an email. Pick up the phone. Let them hear that sincerity in your voice. And it's always that integrity at all times. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Seth Godin is one of my favorite people, and I'll probably quote him a lot today. And he wrote a book called Purple Cow. And it's really about the question that I want you to think about is, what am I doing? So what as a brand makes me stand out? Why is someone going to book my training or my services or my product? What is that thing that makes you remarkable? What is it? What is that X factor? And then what are you doing again to keep demonstrating that? And really, when it comes to branding, it's what are the promises you're willing to keep? Because that's what a brand is. So I know I go through things pretty quickly, but I've got a lot of things that I want you to just leave here with lots of things to think about. So the next part of our branding process is interpersonal, because let's say you tick all the boxes on the verbal, the nonverbal. You walk in and you dressed great and you show up on time. But the way that you deal with people is incredibly vital, because despite the other stuff, if you don't communicate well, or if you're difficult, that becomes part of your brand. Wow, they're great, but they are just a nightmare to work with. They are so hard to communicate to. And that's what we need to think about. So the starting point is literally about self-awareness. How well do you know yourself? And if you just sit with these questions afterwards and you go, okay, am I defensive when it comes to criticism? Do I always need to be right? How am I showing up? If there's a constant stream of conflict in my life, maybe I need to look in the mirror and say, okay, is it me? So the more we know ourselves. So if you think about your cars, right? It's brilliant. There's this early warning system. If you're about to run out of petrol, the fuel light comes on, the brake light comes on. It warns you, if you don't pay attention to this, something's going to go wrong. Now, fortunately, our bodies have the same early warning system. So think about when you get triggered. Where do you feel it in your body? Some of us feel it in our fists. Some of you clench your jaws. You feel it in your stomach. My throat starts to close. So that body wisdom is telling you, oh, I'm triggered. Okay, I better slow down before I respond on it. So the more that you can start to pay attention to that, because the trick is if I can just insert a pause. so that you can, before you want to be able to respond rather than just react. So when it comes to conflict, guys, the rule of thumb is to say, how do I react to the outcome, not to the event? So what do I mean? A few years ago, I was invited to a charity organization and they said, can I come through and brainstorm some ideas for a fundraiser? And I said, great. And I'll never forget, it was a Monday morning. It was in the middle of town. It was pouring with rain. And I'm walking through the doors on time. And as I'm walking through the doors, the client, Jill, was literally walking past me. And I said, Jill, don't we have a meeting now? And she said, you know what? I've got such a migraine. I just want to go to the clicks and go home. And I said, oh, and where's Carol? She goes, I don't know. She was like, there was an emergency and she left about 15 minutes ago. And guys, I literally took a breath and I said to myself, what do you want to be known for? And I said, I'm really sorry you're not feeling well. And I walked her to her car and I said, let me know when you're better and we'll reschedule. And she was really grateful because that's reacting to the outcome. I know they're amazing. I know people get sick. And I know that I do want to work with them again. They're an incredible organization. But don't get me wrong. When she walked through the doors and she canceled and she didn't phone me, I was irritated, just like you would be, because you plan your day, you plan your diary. But I had to override the irritation because I knew what was more important. And if I reacted to the event and I said, but why didn't you phone me? You just wasted a whole hour. I'm branded as a very rude person. So it's always thinking to yourself, okay, if I'm going into something hard, let's say someone in your team totally lets you down. In fact, I had a coaching client this week who had this experience. And someone in her team, she delegated something and she totally dropped the ball. And in the session, she said, I'm going to let her have it and I'm going to tell her what it's like. And I said to her, but what do you want? How do you want the relationship to be post this conversation? Surely you want there to be a lesson in this. What could have been done differently? And then I asked her a hard question and I said, what role did you play in this? Because that hits your ego when you go, how am I accountable? And she said, well, I probably should have followed up a little bit earlier. I probably shouldn't have assumed that she knew what to do or that I should have assumed that everything was fine. So that's the thing. And you want to have these kind of conversations. It's not, I need to be right. I need to be the boss. It's, how do I want to be able to work with this person going forward? And if you can set your intention ahead of the conversation, you're going to navigate it in a much more powerful way. And especially when it comes to virtual, guys, how many times have we had rude emails, WhatsApps, and you go, ugh, and then you want to respond straight away. But when you get triggered, and even if it is a snotty email, pause, insert that pause button, write the mail, put it in your drafts. Don't send the WhatsApp because then that's evidence forever. Get yourself into a place where you can calm down. And even in body language, taking up space is a power move, but so is slowing down in those really high decision-making moments. So it's really about, is delivering this message, is this consistent with who I want to be, with how I want to show up? If you can keep asking yourself that, does this need to be said? What's the best way that I can communicate it? And just some other things to think about when it comes to interpersonal skills. One of the things is feedback. We've got to be able to, we're always on either side, right? We're either giving feedback and at some point we're going to receive feedback, whether from our clients, other people. And just remember, when we give feedback, start with a positive. I'm so happy with this. This has been really good. I love this work on this project. I wanted to chat to you about X, about the presentation. I do think it wasn't your best. And now that person's open to receive. And just remember, when you are having feedback, when you are receiving it, what makes Michael Jordan, what made him one of the best players in the world? Not his skills, the fact that he was coachable. And so we've also got to be able to take in feedback and say, thanks, even if it's so hard to hear, so long as it's given in a nice way, but to go, thank you, you've really given me something to think about, and then sit with it. Don't react in that moment, because it's also, we've got to be able to, because that's how we grow. That's how we get better. Not thinking that we know it all the time. But a question I want to share, because I know that this is really hard, because I'm talking about, we want to be a great brand, we want to show up, and then we think, well, if I say no, I'm going to sabotage my brand. So that's what I want to talk to you about. if we keep giving away our yeses and we don't learn to say no and manage boundaries, we're the ones who burn out. And the starting point is to just separate the decision from the relationship. Because often we think, well, if I deny the request, it's the same as denying the person, and it's not the same thing. So make your decision and then find the courage and the compassion to communicate it. So there's a little formula you can use called the yes sandwich. And the yes sandwich has 3 layers. Number 1, you positively acknowledge the person's intent. 2 is you graciously say no, and 3 is optional, where you give an alternative. So in the real world, if someone said to you, I'm going to a networking event, whether it's online or in person, come with me. And you could say, thanks so much for the invitation. Thanks for thinking of me. This is actually my family time. It's my downtime. I'm already committed. Please think of me for the next one because I'd love to be there. So you can still say no, but in a way that they don't feel like they're being attacked. But often we think we've got a time management issue when in fact we've got a people-pleasing issue. So, because think about it, someone says to you, can you do something? And you want to be an A-type superstar overachiever and you go, I'll do it for you tomorrow, knowing how busy you are and actually how your schedule's already jammed, because we're scared of losing the client or we don't want to upset them. But what tends to happen is that if we keep overcommitting, we can compromise quality for quantity. And so what about rather managing expectations? So if someone says, can you do something? First insert a buffer, which is, let me check my calendar and I'll come back to you. Now look at your calendar, and now you can go back to that person and say, you know what, my diary is slammed until Friday morning. Is Friday afternoon going to work? And you'll find they probably say yes. We assume everything's urgent. And when those things are urgent, yes, we show up, we do what we need to do, but those should be the exceptions, not the rule. And if someone keeps coming to you and saying, oh my God, you need to fix this and it's due tomorrow, and they keep coming to you with the crisis, because we keep accepting the crisis and we're burning ourselves out, we need to learn how to manage those clients. So sometimes you need to say, I'm sorry, I'm actually fully booked. I can help you on Monday. And then they won't do it again because they're so used to you being the yes person. So just be aware of that. If you are the yes person, we're going to start setting boundaries. So some other things that you can do, ask for the actual deadline. When is the latest that you need it by? And sometimes you can provide an alternative solution. Being a writer, I've had people that have come to me and said, can you write my LinkedIn profile for me? And I know the me of 3 years ago would have gone, sure, because I wouldn't want to lose the business. And then I would have agonized over writing this thing that probably wouldn't have been that good. And now I go, thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm not the best person. Tiffany does this for a living. She is phenomenal. Here are her details. So it's not that I don't want to get the work, it's but I know what I'm good at. And I know it's going to waste, well, like where I'm going to put time into that is not going to serve me or my clients. So sometimes it's, is there a better person? Is there someone else? Because sometimes we think, well, it's kind of what I do. But we've also got to start to discern, because if you want to be best at what you're doing, it's also making sure that your energy is going in the right places. And also just to remind you is protect your downtime on weekends, because that's when you recharge. So if you're saying yes to something out of guilt or fear, the birthday party, this thing, the community thing, and you spend all the time there resenting being there because you're thinking, I could be on my couch, I could be reading, I could be with my kids. Just really start to own that time, because that is the time where you need to recharge. Warren Buffett, that's who I was thinking about earlier with the reputation quote. But he also said that the difference between successful and the most successful people is that the most successful say no to almost everything. So I think, guys, the question for you to think about is saying no, is boundary management something I need to work on? What is the cost if I keep saying yes to the detriment of other clients or my health or what I can produce? So of course we want to be team players and we show up when the emergencies, but we need to get our diaries in a way that it's managing, we're not compromising our brand because we keep saying yes. So sometimes what's nice is when you're the person who has the slides, you can decide what you're going to do. So go through these. When you see reflection stop points, when you get the slides, go through them, think about them. Don't just listen and go, okay, fine. Like really reflect afterwards. Maybe there are 3 things you need to start doing, What are 3 things you need to stop doing that you've heard so far? So now this for me is the most important piece when it comes to branding, right? And this is your intrapersonal presence. How am I showing up to myself? Now, the research says that we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day. So guys, I always say you play in around the 12,000 space, and ladies, we're probably like north of 60,000. But what the research says is that over 80% of the thoughts we have every day are negative. Battling guilt, the inner critic, I'm not good enough, I've got imposter syndrome. On a separate note, sign up to my blog. I've just written some really cool stuff about imposter syndrome if that pops up for you. But what's even worse about having these thoughts is that we recycle them. We repeat these thoughts every day. So we really need to start thinking about what is that internal dialogue like? Because your phones are way more advanced than you. In that, when it's time for a software upgrade, you get the message and it says at midnight tonight, we're going to upgrade it. And tomorrow morning you wake up and all the bugs are gone. But for us, it's a manual process. We need to actually sit down and go, what are my thoughts every day? What are my beliefs? And are they serving me? Because your thoughts and beliefs run the operating system of the story you tell yourself. So what is your story? Is it I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm bad with tech, I'm an introvert, I'm bad with numbers, I should have done it in my 20s? Because that story repeats and your mind is always eavesdropping. And the problem with having a story you buy into is it stops you showing up to the opportunities that are available to you. So if you've told yourself, I'm such an introvert, I'm so bad at speaking, then when an opportunity arises, you're going to go, no, that's not me. So change that story. What does that story need to be that you can start to open yourself to other possibilities? And a huge part, guys, in terms of like half of being a successful business owner, yes, it's the business skill set, but it's your psychology. And largely that depends on where you put your focus. Because what has tend to happen in the last 3 years have been incredibly hectic and it's been challenging in every single industry. But what we tend to do in challenge is that we focus on the things we can't control, right? And when you focus on everything that you cannot control, we get anxious. And I'm not talking about chronic anxiety. It's those looping thoughts every day. How am I going to do it? That monkey mind. And anxiety affects really high functioning, successful people because you want control over your world. And when anxiety shows up, it means you're focusing on one of 2 things. You're anxious because you're trying to control your external world, or you're living in the future. So let's say you have to have a hard conversation with someone, right? And you imagine, actually, let's hold that thing because I'm going to come to it now. So what do we do? What do we do when we're anxious? You want to do an anxiety audit. What do I know? What do I know about the situation? What I don't know. Okay. So who can I reach out to? Who in the Ort network? Who's been through this before? Who in my community? Try get that information you need. We love the stuff we can influence, but the stuff you can't control, we need to let go of. So going back to where I was just now, it's say you have to have a courageous conversation or a big pitch, and all you can do is prepare. All you can do is set your intention. Who do I want to be? What is the outcome I want? This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'll say if you know, and you kind of role play the conversation in your mind, but more than that, you can't do because we cannot control the response. But what we do is we project the worst case scenario. Then we bring that into the present and we start living it as if it's already happened. And so I'm just saying, the more that you can go, I cannot control that. I'm going to let it go. And sometimes all you can control is your breath, but it's enough to insert that pause so you can respond rather than react. And so some of the things, okay, what can we control? Sometimes it's about saying, okay, how can I add value to my customers? How do I build my brand? How do I work on the business? I can own the first and the last hour of my day, and we'll touch on that just now. And actually, I can control my thoughts and beliefs. So the more you put your focus on the things you can control, and we let go of the stuff we can't, you're in a better space because it's also the state that you are showing up in. If you arrive anxious, overwhelmed, not only is that permeating to your team, to your clients, but you are the energy of that business. And so you need to get yourself into a peak state so that you are the confidence, even if there's stuff going on. Remember, if you're arriving with that, it's filtering into the team. So the other thing to think about, guys, is what is default when things don't go according to plan? So let's say now there's stuff you can't control. Do you share, do you name, do you blame, do you kind of get into an anxious state, or do you just go, I accept things in my stride? And what we need to remember is that think back, right, to let's think about something that's happened to you in the last 5, 10 years. It could have happened yesterday, but at the time, it felt like it was the worst thing that happened. You didn't get that deal, you didn't get that client, the relationship broke off, you never got the move, the house fell through, whatever it was. And at the time, it felt terrible. But then time went by and we have the gift of hindsight, and you look back and you went, oh my goodness, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have met this person. I wouldn't have got that client. This thing wouldn't have happened, right? So what we need to remember is, I always say, when we are the dot, like now, it's happening now. We don't have that ability to look forward and go, why is this happening? But if you can say to yourself, how do I create significance out of suffering? And if you can stand in that situation and go, okay, how is life happening for me? How is this a gift? How can I use this as strength? I'll share it with Tracy in the notes. There's an amazing book, a business owner who shared her story of, she started in a garage and she just sold her makeup business to L'Oreal for 1.2 billion. And it was a really hard story because she got no after no after no. And she said, and it's the last quote there, she said, what if your greatest setback was your greatest setup? And I think if we can remember that as we go, because that's the thing with entrepreneurship, right? We up and down, we up and down. When you are in a challenging space, and if you can see it from that point of view, that is your fuel to move through it. So it really is about that self-talk. It's if you walk into a pitch and that voice is telling you, you don't deserve to be here, you're never going to get this, that comes through in every part of you, your energy. So bring out the inner cheerleader. Be nice to yourself. Speak nicely to yourself. Back yourself, because if you are not backing yourself, no one else is going to. So some other things that you can do to shift your state, to change your focus, is just with a better set of questions. So not, why does this always happen to me, but what am I grateful for? How can I learn from this? You could say, what is this here to teach me? My favorite question that comes from Tony Robbins is, he says, say you've got something coming up and you're really nervous about it. And he says, and I always ask myself this, and I say, how can I make this more successful than I ever dreamed of and have fun doing it? Because how much better are you walking into a challenge with that question rather than, I hope I don't mess this up? So really that, and it's so simple, but so powerful to change your question. Other thing that you need to be aware of are the words that you use every day, right? So if we were having a conversation and I said to you, you know what, I think you're wrong. You're not gonna, it's not a big deal. If I said to you, I think you're a liar, what did the word liar just do to you? It just triggered you, right? And so those are the words we need to be aware of, because when I call you a liar, you just got triggered. Your cortisol spiked, something is shifted in you. So just be careful the words. You know, when someone says, how are you? And you go, I'm so stressed. I'm so anxious. This is such a nightmare. The words are causing chemical reactions. Biochemically, your body is shifting. And it sounds like airy fairy. What's the difference? It makes a huge difference. If you said rather, I am so disgusted, I'm surprised, I'm really angry, I'm a little peeved. And you can even laugh at yourself, but pay attention to those words that you use. Right, so I'm not going to do that. So the other thing that I really want you to think about while we're still talking about intrapersonal, guys, is self-care. You cannot show up as the brand you want to be if you do not have energy. Energy is the source of everything. Emotional energy, mental energy, physical energy, everything. So please schedule yourselves into your calendar. And I know you feel like I don't have time, but make time to move, to have a practice where you can think, to let your mind wander, because that's, you are the business. So put yourself in, schedule yourself in the calendar, and treat yourself as important as you would anybody else. Because actually that's where your confidence comes from. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, when you go, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and journal or read or meditate or walk or whatever it is, and you actually do it, you're showing, I can trust myself. But every time you break that agreement and you go, oh, tomorrow, that's when we dent our self-esteem. So it really is, this is about intention. Branding is, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? And then set an alarm in your phone to go off throughout the day so that the words bold, confident come up and you just think, okay, what am I doing? What I do before every single meeting. So a really nice practice you can do as well. So at the end of today, what's happening in your diary tomorrow? And before every meeting, set an alarm to go off 10 minutes before. And what I do when that alarm goes off, because it just triggers me, it brings me back into the present. And I think, okay, so when that alarm goes off, I think, right, I've got a coaching session with this person. What do they need from me? Who do I need to be? What do I need to bring to this? And it takes 10 seconds. It doesn't have to take 10 minutes, but you set your intention throughout the day. So what we've spoken about now, right, is all around being in person. But what I want you to think about as well, and I'm going to touch on this quite briefly before we get into the last section, is your virtual presence. So if you think about email, right, when you get a mail, you've got three choices. You can read it immediately, you can save it in your drafts, or you can delete it. And the thing that makes you decide is the sender, because that's as much a brand. And what you want to think about is when my email lands in someone's inbox, I want them to know that it's valuable, that it's important. And so these things go through in your own time, but I always ask, what are your email bugbears? And when it's so long, they spelled my name wrong, there was bad spelling. And so when you read a mail that's got these little mistakes in them, you think to yourself, well, if I can't even spell my name right, what's in the body? How do I take this seriously? So I just want you to start thinking about those little things. Am I checking my mails? I'm not, because we're always in such a rush. What is it? It's another form of you, right? It's another brand. Everything you do, documents, emails, messages, it's like this giant brand you stamp. Am I happy with this? Not everything has to be perfect. So don't go to the other extreme of perfection, but be cognizant. Did I check it? Am I happy with it? These are some things you can read in your own time. Also, just remember, WhatsApp is no longer just a social thing, but we speak to our clients on it. Is your profile photo something that you are proud of? Does it represent you as the brand that you want to be? And same thing, grammar, spelling, and just think about tonality. Because if it's not your buddy, even if it's a client, there's still a level of professionalism. How is that language? How are you writing those messages? And all of you must have on your machines Grammarly. Grammarly is free, and it will make sure that you never have a spelling mistake or grammar issue again. It is a godsend. So other things, guys, just to keep remembering to think about, how am I showing up in meetings? Am I showing up on time? Is my camera on? You want to build relationships. Please, where possible, keep your camera on, especially when you're meeting clients or working with them if you're not in person. Are you prepared? Do you have the link? You don't want to be signing on a minute before and then your system doesn't update and now you're late for the meeting. So it's just these little things to think about. Am I showing up prepared and polished? Okay, also the other thing is just when it comes to email and you have to say to yourself, does this sound aggressive? Does this sound okay? And there's a bit of ambiguity in the tone. Always rather pick up the phone. Have an email trail, but just be aware that email can be a very tricky game and things can be misinterpreted. And just remembering that, when people want to find you, they are going to come and search for you. So it's just remembering whether you are on LinkedIn, whatever platform you're on, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or, the socials, is there consistency? So is the person they meet the same person on LinkedIn, the same person on Facebook, etc.? So there must be consistency. And it's just remembering that there's an accountability based on what you want to post and share, that before you post it, to go, does this really represent me in the best possible way? So have a LinkedIn page, have a LinkedIn profile, connect to people. I use LinkedIn as a thought leadership platform. I write every single week. I post every single day. If you don't, and I don't want to go into a long discussion now, be present, show up somewhere, find where your people are, and that's where you need to be. You don't have to, if it's not your business, don't worry about videos and things. it must just be relevant to your audience, to the people you are trying to serve. So wherever they are, just keep showing up, because you just never know. So the last piece of this, because how long have we got? Oh, goody, we've got at least 25 minutes. So the last piece is about your social presence, because this has so far been around, almost to an extent, me, the way that I'm managing myself, the way that I'm showing up, I'm setting my intention. But branding is not in isolation. The most important piece is about, what am I doing to build relationships? What am I doing to strengthen my network? So I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. So it's about just remembering you control this package and the message that you send out, and it's always having an awareness. Is this the way that I want to show up? Is the way I'm speaking to someone, treating someone? And when we think about networking, we always think about pre-COVID, those old school mixes where you had to arrive somewhere and you collected business cards and then you never used them. So that's not networking. The way we build relationships is through connection, conversation, and collaboration. And conversations are the currency of change. Conversations is where you do your business, not on emails. And the question is, are we having enough conversations? Are we having enough of the right conversations? And this is the way that you add value. So I was working with a client who, in a conversation, had told me she was pregnant with her first child. And of course, the whole work-life balance thing came up. And then we got into the work story. And about a week later, I was reading on Harvard Business Review, and there was a great article about the benefits of working moms with kids. I copied the link. I sent her a mail and I said, "Hi, thought you'd appreciate this article. Have a super day." That's all it was. So it's just, unless I actually was interested in her and took an interest in what's going on, I wouldn't have known that information. So sometimes it's just about being as interested as you are interesting. And we know we should be having more conversations, right? But often what stops us, and firstly we think, well, I don't know how to do it. I don't know this person. But it's just remembering everyone's got a past, a present, and a future. So the first time you meet a client, you can say, wow, what did you do before you came into this role? What's your biggest challenge now? And at some point, we're going to be talking about, what are you doing in the December holidays? But there's always a starting point. And if you're not sure and you think you're a terrible introvert, just get the person to speak about themselves. They will think you are amazing. And another piece of advice is that if there's someone that you feel like, I've tried everything and I just don't know how to connect with this person, what you want to do is, how do I create a platform just to have a baseline, and you can ask for advice. So if there's someone you're really not connecting with, or you kind of clashing, and you said, I'm looking for a new business book, what do you recommend? I'm dealing with this situation. What would you suggest? And it's not sucking up. It's genuinely coming to them, because if you can raise their significance and make them feel like they matter and you're asking them for advice, it starts to shift that dynamic. Other things we think is that I don't have time, but guys, network most when you need it least. But the thing that really stops us is fear, because it's just false evidence appearing real. It's the fear of the unknown outcome. What if they say no? What if they don't like me? What if I'm not good enough? But it's just remembering that success is measured by the amount of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have and uncomfortable actions you're willing to take. And the more comfortable you can be feeling uncomfortable, the more you will move things along. And sometimes it's yes. What's the worst case scenario? They say no, but it could also be no, not now. And it's often the thing we fear the most that we most need to do. So what is that thing you've been putting off? Is it having that conversation? Is it getting in touch with that person? Is it setting up that meeting? And just do it. And often our worst case, we suffer more than imagination than we do in reality. So again, thinking, what is a big change that you want to make? And often we focus on what will I lose? But it's just about, well, what will I gain? What if it does work? And we're so worried about taking action, but the bigger question is about, what is the cost of inaction? If I don't make a move, if I don't do this thing, what is it going to cost me and my business, those around me, 1 year, 3 years from now? And if you just reimagine fear as a compass. So if you think about the first time you got into your business, or the first big client, or the first big pitch. It was terrifying. But now you can do it with your eyes closed. And so when the next opportunity comes along and you get that, oh, I don't know if I can do this, just remind yourself it's another one of those. That's where my growth lies. And if we think about going back to those words in the beginning, what we wrote down, the most important word that you want to have on there is about trust. Because and what is trust? How do we build it? It's about credibility and being consistent. And you can always behave your way back into trust. But if you think about someone where you've got a really good relationship, high trust means high speed, low cost, but the inverse on the other. And I know it sounds so simple, but the way we build trust is really about listening. And I know you think, well, of course I listen, but the more we listen, the more people tend to share, because everyone's going to need to be heard. And think about when you're in a conversation, are you really listening, or are you thinking, what can I say next? Oh, I'm going to sound really smart. So you're kind of in your own head. You're not really thinking about them, or you're thinking, how can I solve it? And sometimes people don't want a solution. They just actually want a sounding board. And the more that we can focus, listen to someone, you get different levels of listening. And if we can just move from a level 1 to a level 2, and that's where you're watching and you can see the verbal, you can see, do they just cross their arms? What is their tone like? And you really focus in on that person. And if you just move from a level 1 to a level 2, you will start to shift relationships. So some last points before we move into questions is I want you to think about, what are you doing to create visibility for yourself as a brand, as a business? It's also that art of self-promotion. Are you writing posts? Are you writing newsletters? Are you adding value? I actually, on a previous Ort session, one of the guys had just said he'd written his thesis. I wasn't sure if it was an MBA or a PhD or something. And so he said what he's going to do then is take the findings and he's going to share them, and he's going to say, you know, I've written this thing, or write a summary of it, send it to the clients. I thought you'd find this valuable. So I think it's just keep thinking about, what am I doing that I'm seen and that I'm out there? But it must fit within what you want. And sponsors and mentors. I mean, Ort has got the most phenomenal program. Use it, take advantage of it. But it's also about saying, who's in my industry, who's done really well? Who can I learn from? And maybe it's reaching out to them and saying, can I meet you for 30 minutes once a month or every 2 months? And start to, you know, extract wisdom from people that have done it before. Because remember, in every new phase, right? Because our careers, you know, back in the day, it was the straight line, but especially as an entrepreneur, you sometimes forward, you're going backwards, things are diagonal, but we, at every new client, new opportunity, new learning, we get to reinvent ourselves as a brand. But what's really interesting is that you also need to take accountability for making yourself relevant. So what am I doing to stay relevant in my industry, in the stuff that I'm reading? Because remember as well, for you to be a powerful brand, you also need to be inspiring yourself. What are you reading? What are you filling your time with? If you're driving in the car, you're listening to audiobooks, to podcasts, what are you doing to grow yourself? And a really important piece in terms of as a brand is what I call it. And our courage zone is the business we want to create, the leader we want to be, etc., etc. So in order to move from our comfort zone to our courage zone, it means we need to develop a growth mindset. And a growth mindset just says, I believe in my ability to figure things out. I know life happens for me. I know I can move through anything. And so some things to think about when it comes to developing your growth mindset. So just remember, you get to deliver your own life curriculum. You get to decide, you know what, I'm in this, but I would love to learn something technical. I would love to get my public speaking skills. I'd love to learn about digital marketing. And we've got this amazing opportunity that there's information at our fingertips. So you get to decide that. But really, it's also just remembering challenge is part of the journey. You know, if you said to a bodybuilder, what do you do to get those muscles? And they'll say, I push against incredible resistance. And it's remembering us that the way that we grow, if you think about what you've been through in the last 3 years, especially, how have you grown as a person? How much challenge did you go through, but it's built you up to where you are now? And it's not to resent challenge. It's actually, how do I use this as fuel? How is this happening for me? And if you can approach that as you go through your career, you're going to keep moving forward, growing. And because you don't want to just say, oh, well, I went through that. You want to incorporate that growth, build it in as part of who you are. And you guys, you also have to acknowledge your wins. Because often, you'll achieve something, you'll go, but it was just that, or oh, it wasn't a big deal. But if you can look back and say, right, measure backwards. Where was I 10 years ago? Oh my goodness, what would myself of 10 years ago, if they had to see what I've done now, what would they say? And we have to keep acknowledging our wins along the way, because it's, well, I did that. So actually it gives me the courage to do this. And so it's micro bravery, it's incremental steps over time, but you've got to acknowledge that growth and where you are so that you can keep moving forward. And you'll go through these points in your own time. So the last point that I want to share with you before we go into questions, right? Because sometimes we have those days where you kind of just feel, well, getting in the shower has been an achievement. And it's like, the stuff you should be doing, or you should change your focus, but you're just feeling a bit flat. What do we do on those days? So here is the tool. If I asked you, are you the same person that you were 5 years ago? You're going to say no. So arguably, are you going to be the same person in 5 years' time? No. So now if you can see current you and future you as two different people, you are going to start to make decisions in your own best interest. So let's say that you are 5 years. What are you doing? What does that business look like? And you've got this empire and you are speaking all over the world, but the you of today is terrified of public speaking. So in order for me now to meet future me's goals, I need to get comfortable speaking in public. So I have to be authentic to them, not to me. And if you think to yourself, but if I don't shift, if I don't make the changes, if I don't do the things I want to do, how am I setting future me up for success? So I want to play you a clip, guys. This comes from Matthew McConaughey's acceptance speech. So I'm going to just fast forward to a particular point. And there, so you don't have to watch all of this. Okay, if you can't hear, Trace, just shout.
All these performances were impeccable, in my opinion. I didn't see a false note anywhere. I want to thank Jean-Marc Vallée, our director. I want to thank Jared Leto, Jennifer Garner, who I worked with daily. There's a few things, about 3 things to my account that I need each day. One of them is something to look up to, another is something to look forward to, and another is someone to chase. Now, first off, I want to thank God, because that's who I look up to. He's graced my life with opportunities that I know are not of my hand or any other human hand. He has shown me that it's a scientific fact that gratitude reciprocates. In the words of the late Charlie Lawton, who said, when you got God, you got a friend, and that friend is you. To my family, that's who and what I look forward to. To my father, who I know is up there right now with a big pot of gumbo. He's got a lemon meringue pie over there. He's probably in his underwear, and he's got a cold can of Miller Lite, and he's dancing right now. To you, Dad, you taught me what it means to be a man. To my mother, who's here tonight, who taught me and my 2 older brothers, demanded that we respect ourselves. And what we in turn learned was then we were better able to respect others. Thank you for that, Mama. To my wife, Camilla, and my kids, Levi, Vita, and Mr. Stone, the courage and significance you give me every day I go out the door is unparalleled. You are the 4 people in my life that I want to make the most proud of me. Thank you. And to my hero, that's who I chase. Now, when I was 15 years old, I had a very important person in my life come to me and say, who's your hero? And I said, I don't know, I got to think about that. Give me a couple of weeks. I come back 2 weeks later. This person comes up and says, who's your hero? I said, I thought about it. You know who it is? I said, it's me in 10 years. So I turned 25 10 years later. That same person comes to me and goes, so are you a hero? And I was like, Not even close. No. She said, why? I said, because my hero is me at 35. So you see, every day, every week, every month, and every year of my life, my hero's always 10 years away. I'm never gonna be my hero. I'm not gonna attain that. I know I'm not. And that's just fine with me because that keeps me with somebody to keep on chasing. So to any of us, whatever those things are, whatever it is we look up to, whatever it is we look forward to, and whoever it is we're chasing, to that I say amen. To that I say, all right.
So this concept, guys, of a future self is so powerful, because when you create a bigger future, that's how you ignite your present. Because when you've got a compelling future vision and you go, this is where I'm going, and you get to create it, it means any challenges you face now are just speed bumps along the way, because you know where you're going. So really sit and do this activity and think, okay, me in maybe 10 years is a little bit far away, me in 5 years' time. And it's not only about what am I doing, it's how do I feel? What does my morning look like? What activities am I doing? Am I going through the day with a sense of joy and gratitude and contentment? Because it's not only about the stuff that I do, but it's how do I want to feel as I go through my day? What's that person like? You know, who are they? Where are you living? Who do they hang out with? What are the kind of conversations? What do they know? And the more that you can create this picture, and of course you can change your mind, the more that you, as I said, ignite, because it brings into perspective, what am I doing now to set that up for success? Because when you choose the behavior, you choose the future consequences. So it could just feel like, and it could be as small as, well, if I just replace Coca-Cola for water, it's just drinking water. Yeah, but how's it going to affect you 6 months, a year from now? The decision to start to say no, the decision to speak up in meetings, the decision to, you fill in the blank. Think about that compound effect, because your future self is the compound effect of your actions now. So it's everything, doesn't matter how small, the skills that you want to build, because we always underestimate what we can do in a year, but we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. So something else that you can look at and think about, what would be an ideal day for you, right? If you think about it, what time am I waking up? What does that ideal day look like? Who are the clients that I'm seeing? What are the kind of things? What time am I logging off? What time am I going to bed? And then to say, right, if this is my actual day and this is my dream day, what am I not making time for? What needs to shift? And as I said earlier, if you literally can begin to control your first, I always used to say control the first hour and the last hour of the day. But I think sometimes if you can just at least control the first 15 minutes, it's enough, because it's about putting yourself in that peak state for the day. So wake up 30 minutes earlier. Don't check your phone first thing. If you check your phone first thing, you're straight into reactive mode. Who needs me? What does everyone else need? Start your day with some meditation, with some journaling, with some exercise. The point is, you want to trigger yourself and decide how you want to feel. You decide the feelings you want to bring to the day. And whatever happens, of course, you're going to deal with it. And then at the end of the day, don't check your screens or your phones or be on emails at least an hour before bed. And you want to make an evening routine really powerful. And then it's about saying, okay, is there a book I can read, something that's going to calm my mind? And then before you go to sleep, almost visualize the next day. How do you want it to unfold? And then you start your day thinking about, how do I want my day to unfold? And so it just starts to give you a sense of, no, we can't control the external, but you start to control that inner world. And when you are controlling your inner world, you will show up as the brand that you want to be. So these are some things that you could also think about with some journaling prompts. And something else, in terms of future you, is also, to consider your legacy. Because maybe that's also something to think about, the days when it's really hard and you're going, why did I do this? But what is it that you want to create? What is the impact you want to make on the world? And if that is also part of your future vision, it's going to start to give you clarity and the building blocks of what you can start to do now. So remember, you can create yourself into the person you want to be by behaving yourself into the person you want to become. It's about setting your goals, creating micro wins. Micro wins are the first step. It's like the first Lego brick of the creation. So figure out who you want to be and then just keep showing up one micro win at a time. So some last quotes to end off with before we go into questions. This comes from Austin Kleon, and he said, build a good name. Keep your name clean. Don't make compromises. Don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned with doing good work. Because if you can build a good name, eventually that becomes its own currency. And that is the power of your brand. So Dan Gilbert said, human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. We are always evolving, always learning, always reinventing ourselves as a brand. You might be in a certain industry now, and you never know where you're going to be in 2 or 3 or 5 years' time. So that's the amazing thing, is that we can keep reinventing ourselves. We can constantly be upgrading the technical skills we're doing, but you can never stop growing from an emotional point of view, knowing yourself, that personal mastery. And Woody Allen said 80% of life is just showing up. And it really is. And it's setting that intention. It's saying, who do I want to be? How am I showing up? Because that's how we build success. You know, if I said to you, who got to the gym today? Well, if you just arrived, you're 80% of the way there, because then the rest is just to do the workout. The hard part's getting there. And I think for you, it's just show up to opportunities, keep showing up on those platforms, keep showing up and doing what you're doing. And if you keep showing up, doing it the best that you can, we never know what opportunities are waiting for us. So to close off, if you think, well, I'm not sure where to go next, when you wake up tomorrow, instead of saying, what do I want to do today? It's, what does future me want me to do today? So I'm going to stop sharing because I wanted to leave space for questions. So guys, I know I go through a fortune of stuff in a short space of time, but I want you to feel like you've got value and lots to think about. So I would love to, Trace, I haven't obviously looked at the chat. Are there questions? Who's got some questions, thoughts, something you want to speak about, something that's going on?
Nothing in the chat box. So I'm hoping that the audience will unmute themselves so we can engage for a little bit longer.
Because guys, this is how we learn from each other. Whatever you're thinking, everybody else is thinking the same thing. Don't let fear stop you.
I love the template that you shared with us just moments ago on things that you're doing right now, those things that you would prefer to be doing, and working through that, each of us individually, to prepare ourselves for our future self and to make our days better. I think the value that you've shared with us this morning, I love the content. It's always updated and refreshed and wonderful for our audience. And as you said, Laurie, there's so much that you went through. I think the audience should all take time to look at the deck and work through it slowly and individually in their own space and time. And then perhaps if there are questions or anything that comes out of that, if you would look at them for us and perhaps guide on the way forward.
Sure, absolutely. But I think, and Trace, just to reiterate what you said, is that like really go through. I've put some if you're not someone who journals, maybe let me chat about that for a minute. A lot of the time people go, well, I don't know what to do with journaling. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And really it's just, I think what's so important is like, if, you know, I'm sure everyone here is pretty much in their own business, but whatever situation that you're in, it's about clarity. And the more that you know yourself, the more that you know what you're looking to achieve. Even if I said to you, do you know what you want in the next 3 years? Because even that future vision, that future self question, a lot of people go, I don't know. And it's just giving yourself that space to really think about it. So there's a lot of journaling prompts. So literally take a book and just start writing. And the power of journaling is that it gets those thoughts out of your mind and it traps them on the page. Because when you, and if you don't get them out of your mind, that's when they loop all day. Or it could even be you've got a pitch coming up or something, and just to think, like, work through your thoughts. You know, even if you just said, right, what are my wins? What do I want? And like a really fun one. What would excite me? What would I love to achieve? Make it huge. You know, who would I love? Who would I love to be serving? Who are my dream clients? What would I love to be doing? And then literally take a page in your calendar and map out your perfect day. because it's something that I've done recently, and it was such a nice exercise to do. And because then it gives you also complete clarity. How much do I want to be working? Not everybody on this call wants the empire. And I think a lot of the time when we're opening our own businesses, sometimes it is a lifestyle business. Sometimes it's, well, this needs to fit in my world because I've got kids, or because I've got responsibilities, or because I've got this other stuff going on. So it's not a perfect way of how business is meant to be. It's, what's my dream world? What does it look like for me? And you start to craft that. So it's really about, the more that you can live by design and not live by default, the more you're going to start to thrive in your business and really show up powerfully.
Thank you, Laurie. I see the amazing feedback and comments coming through in the chat box from different people. It's been incredible. Some people have let us know on the chat box that they're logging off a little bit earlier, but I promise to send them the recording, the slide deck, and any other resources that you share with us.
What I'll do is I'll send you the slides, because they're a little bit updated from the last one, and then I think you've got my resource list, Trace.
I have your blog, your newsletter. So I'll share that link, and then I have all the other resources.
Yeah. So guys, I've also got some recommended books, some recommended podcasts. But if you want to reach out to me, Trace, do you want to just put my email in the chat? If you want to reach out to me, if you've got any questions that you didn't want to put to do it in this forum, please feel free to drop me a mail. If you need any advice or looking for some good resources, let me know.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm going to put your email in the post-webinar communication. And for all the ladies on our call this morning, we celebrate Women's Day at Orchjet. In fact, we celebrate Women's Month, starting with Laurie today. So I invite you all to join us on the 10th of August at Ort at 9 a.m. We have a personal styling workshop, which is 2 hours, as well as a lovely breakfast and lots of goodies and treats for our ladies. Please join us. If you would like to, you can reply to admin@ortjet.org.za.
Okay, perfect. Well, I've sent this.
There's your email. Thank you so much, Laurie.
Thank you. But thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up, for you doing this for yourself. I appreciate you guys being here. So Trace, thank you.
Thank you. It's always amazing to work with you, and we certainly will be doing something live with you beginning of September. So when I receive an overview, we can schedule a date. And to everyone on the call, I'm going to put up a donation poll before we close off today. If you are in a position to make a donation to Orchjet, please, I ask you to click on an amount and then submit your donation to Ort. We have a fundraising event tomorrow, the 27th, 28th of July at 4 p.m. at Montana Nightclub in Rosebank. Please join us. If you don't want to come along and spin, you are welcome just to join us to network, mingle, and have a party. I'm sure you've all seen our communication. Just show up if you can. So thank you all for your time this morning. Laurie, as always, a pleasure working with you. There is no one for me who embodies the essence of a personal brand like you do. From your website to your Facebook to everything you do is always so beautiful. I love reading your weekly blogs. In fact, we post a lot of them on the Orchjet website. We share with our network. And tomorrow, in fact, we'll be putting up a new blog by you that you just recently released. So thank you for being part of our organization and for all your support. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Trace. Thanks, everybody. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. We wish you a good rest of your Wednesday morning.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.